Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you may be across the world. Uh, Thanks for joining us here today for Serverless Office Hours on AWS and also on serverless land. I'm Julian Wood, a developer advocate for serverless at AWS, and I'm joined by the ever effervescent.
I could never get away from saying effervescent. I would never be able to pull that off. Effervescent, people go, So, hi, I'm Eric Johnson, also known as EDJ Geek on Twitter, and I'm also a serverless developer advocate here at AWS. And I'm joined by the effervescent, wrong way, Julian. So, there we go. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today's going to be a good one. We're talking about transforming API requests and responses in the new, better, faster, more cheaper HTTP APIs. And Eric is properly the guru, so you're well suited to have Eric leading on this. And yeah, the first hour is Eric dropping his phenomenal wisdom by building some cool stuff.
First half hour.
And then we open it all up to answer all your questions about HTTP APIs or anything serverless in general. So you can ask me questions, you can ask Eric questions. He knows way more than I do. And we've got some of our other DAs who are moderating the chats, whichever stream you may be watching on, and they'll ask all the questions that we don't know, which is unlimited. So send them on. We'd love to know, any questions, comments, anything. We're here to help. This is Serverless Office Hours.
That's Eric, right. Well, working with the transforms and working with the HTTP API, this is something that has been kind of an exciting addition. It kind of slipped under the radar about a month and a half ago. It was like, oh, this is out. And it's highly, it's a feature that people are looking for. Now, I want to be clear that when we're talking about transforming request and response, if you've listened to some of the talks I've done about building a URL shortener with just API Gateway and DynamoDB, there's a lot of transformation magic that happens there using VTL or velocity templating language in API Gateway. Do you do VTL, Julian?
I know of it. I know it's terrible to troubleshoot. I can spell it. I've done a little bit of stuff with it, but yeah, it's there. It's there. But I mean, just to back up, so we're talking about here we're obviously got two different API gateway products. One REST APIs,
V1,
which has been there for years, and that's fully featured, got loads of stuff. And we've got the new HTTP APIs, which came out, was it last year or is time flying?
Went GA earlier in March last year, and it was announced at a reInvent in 2019.
2019. Okay, so yep. I'm a few months out. The stuff goes too quickly over there. And HTTP APIs is literally API gateway REST APIs built sort of from the groundish up, but built for speed, and it's up to 70% cheaper. And it's really the sort of new way AWS is trying to build RESTful APIs. So even though it's called HTTP APIs, and that's going to be tough to Google anything on the internet with that name. We know, sorry.
Here's the trick. You ready for the trick? Obviously AWS HTTP APIs, or look for the CloudFormation resource, which can either be, and this is how I search everything, AWS : serverless : HTTP API, and that'll take you right to that resource, or in the CloudFormation resource, AWS : API Gateway V2 : HTTP API. So that'll get you closer to it.
Excellent, that helps, because I mean the idea with the HTTP APIs, as I said, is definitely cheaper. Things are going to be faster and everything. But people ask, well, why isn't all the functionality from REST APIs in HTTP APIs? And yeah, it's not all there yet. But actually, what they're doing is they're not just porting over all the functionality, but they're actually taking the cool stuff and the stuff that's most used and porting it over, but always improving it. So it's hopefully we're not going to get to the stage of, there's going to be some little annoyances or some little things you maybe found difficult in RESTful APIs. Well, HTTP APIs is the team literally rising up to the challenge to think, how can we reinvent this, to use the typical AWS term, and make this even better, simpler, and all this kind of thing. So
and less expensive.
And you've seen over the past few months that it's a drip feed, and quite a few releases are coming out for HTTP APIs, and that's deliberate because the team is working hard to to do this in a new way, in a different way, in a better way, and taking tons of customer feedback to also get this. So I'm sort of making the point that we're not just taking some code from REST APIs, squashing it into HTTPIs, and calling it done. That transformation process is being done very deliberately, very carefully, ultimately to improve the experience for everybody and the performance.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So to kind of summarize, like what Julian's saying, the transformations we're talking about today is not a replacement to the VTL. This is just, you are able to transform headers, paths, and query strings on the incoming. And Julian, if you'll throw in the documentation there, it kind of lays this out as well. But yeah, you could do headers, query strings, and paths on API requests. And then on the response itself, you can do, based on the status code, you can update the header. So we're not manipulating the body yet. And that's kind of where we need to be when we're doing, obviously the massive body transform, things like that. And that's something that's coming down the road. But this is a great start at being able to modify how we do things and being able to really, honestly, what I'm going to show today, I'm going to start building here in just a second, is this idea of, and you've heard us say it, several times. I think Ajay Nair is the first to say this: is we shouldn't use lambdas to transport, just transform. But what we find is sometimes, we need to, if someone's making a request, we need to modify it just a little bit and then send it on somewhere. And if we can do that modification at the HTTP API, then that removes the need for a Lambda function for this particular application. And more importantly, it removes the need for you to write code to do this. So I don't know. Should we jump in and get started?
Yeah, that sounds good. So just take a step back. If people don't know about the sort of request response, this is somebody hits an API via API gateway, and before the information that goes to the API hits the Lambda function, you want to do a little bit of a transform over there. Going to hit the Lambda function, do your funky business logic, whatever. And then on the return path, you also want to do a bit of a tweak just to sort of get it in and out. Now, before, of course, you could do all of that within a Lambda function yourself. But, okay, Lambda functions aren't big and bulky, I was about to say, like, really. But, this can be even more performance, and you don't have to pay for the requests on the Lambda function. You don't have to maintain that kind of code over there. It's just bolted in as a feature of API Gateway that as the requests come in and the responses come back out, you can do the little bit of the tweaking.
That's right. All righty. Well, I'm going to jump in here. Hopefully, I'm going to blow that up just a little more. Julian, let me know if you can't see it.
Will do.
Hopefully that is good size. Whew, I can't make that slide over. So this is what we got. All right, let's just hide that a little bit. All right. So this is Postman. I'm going to use Postman to kind of get our this is our client for our application right now. Hopefully that is big enough. I really can't get it any bigger. And what we're going to do is we're going to build the ever popular weather application. And really, the application isn't so much important here is what we're doing. And this has so many different, applications that you can use in your applications. How many times can I say applications in this? So we're going to build a weather application. And I have an account on openweathermap.org. And this is what their path looks like. And they have several different APIs that we can use. But this is what it looks like. You pass in the data, the 2.5, then you say the weather. You pass in your zip, 80534. And your app ID, and this is my API key. Now you can't see it, although I just highlighted it so you can. That's okay. I'm using the variables in Postman to do that. If I hit send, I get a weather update here. Okay, so you can see, there's different places there's different weather that we're looking at. Let's see, we got clear skies and some visibility of 10,000. That's pretty good. So very simple weather application, but this is a complex API that I may not want my users to have to know. Instead, I want to build this in. I want to do two things. I want to build it so it's part of my application and I have security wrapped around it, and it's a simpler API call. Then I want to do some mapping. I also don't want my customers to know my API key. They can't use that. I need to be able to add that after they've made a request, right? So HTTP APIs to the rescue. We're going to build this. We're not going to use a single Lambda function in this application. Let's get started. All right. So I'm going to jump over to Prod 9 here, which I use for building my applications. I have a big old honking server. It's called Big Papa. You can see it up here somewhere in the, I don't know. It's stored up there somewhere. All right, so we're gonna start. Are you laughing at me, Julian?
I think it's brilliant. Big Papa 9.
Well, I'm a father of 5, and so I can't get any of them to call me Big Papa. But there it is. So, all right. So, a couple things we're gonna do now. This is our weather application. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to actually add our authentication stack. Okay. Now our authentication stack is literally, and I'm going to show you here. Here's the auth stack, and we'll be sharing this code later. This particular stack, we're not going to walk through building, but this particular stack builds out the entire Cognito backend that I need to build out my system. Okay, so this has my user pool. It's got my user pool client IDs. It even builds a domain to handle my sign up, sign in, refresh or reset password, those kinds of things. And that's all here, and I'm glad to share that code with you. But I'm going to import that. I'm actually going to use that as a sub stack, okay, or a nested stack. So I'm going to refer to my auth.yaml file, and the only thing I need to pass in is a client domain. And that client domain is literally just what is the client that I'm going to use. And we do this for cores, we do this for logins. So we're able to say with our OAuth 2, we're able to say just this client or just this domain can hit this. So what we're going to need is we're going to go ahead and pass in a parameter so that you can set this however you want. So I'll just come in here and I'm actually going to override it. Now, I'm not even going to try to, that was weird. Let's try that again. I'm not even going to try to pull your leg and make you think I'm typing all this. As you've probably figured out already, I'm copying and pasting. I do this because I'm a lousy typer. And as you, I mean, I can't even get copy and paste right. So Lord knows we don't want me typing. So, all right, so there's the client. So passing in the default for us is serverless weather. I pass in the we actually want that to be HTTPS. Okay, so we pass in our protocol and our address, and there we go. So far we've got our client. We've got that we're passing as parameters. So when we deploy this with SAM, and then we have our auth stack, which is a nested stack that'll pull in this file.
So is this a good idea for SAM templates to be able to pull in other kind of stacks? That sort of, does it help to logically separate your code, and maybe that stack can be reusable, or it's a bit more easy to reason with?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing here is SAM can do transforms on these applications. Direct nested stacks not, but applications it can. So if you've got some Lambda functions in there, that should work fine as well. But this does, as you get larger, and let's say you have something that you need to share across, let's say your application consists of 10 teams and all of you are using the same authentication stack. Well, you can put that in the serverless application repository. You can store it in an S3 bucket, or it can be local somewhere where you share it. And one person can manage and update that and then just say, okay, update this information. So that's just one example. There's a lot of different ways that you can use nested stacks, and the application resource type is a great way to handle that. All right, so let's get busy building the rest of this. Now, I like logs. I like observability, Julian, and I know Julian does. If you've not watched some of Julian's observability stuff, this is a shameless plug to do that. So I'm going to actually create a log group that my API gateway can log to. Remember, I'm not using any Lambda functions in this particular application, so I'm not going to log out from Lambda. So I need to know what's going on at the HTTP API level. So I'm going to build in a log group for me to do that. Okay. All right. So now let's get to the meat of this. Let's go ahead and bring in our weather API. And this is actually this resource is going to create the weather API itself. Now, let me talk through this just a bit. With this, obviously, it's an HTTP API. That's the type. And remember when I said when you're searching Google, use that string right there. That'll take you right to it. Okay? That's just good for any CloudFormation searching. All right. The second thing is our properties. So I told you I want a log. So I'm going to do some access log settings. My destination ARN is I get it from that log group, and then I pass in a bunch of data. I probably don't need all this, but I found it's very handy. But the one that really comes in handy is this one out here. Was there a problem with my authentication? Also, my integration. So I jumped to the end there. So that gives me some information if I'm having issues. All right. I set up a CORS configuration. The only thing I need is a GET, because that's all they're doing. So, and like anything else, only use what you need. Limited or least privileges. Only use what you need here. So I set up just where they're allowed to get CORS, and the only origin allowed is the client. Okay, so if we're doing some cross domain scripting, things like that, I'm blocking that by only allowing it to use the one coming in. So that is basically all you need to build a very basic HTTP API, but we don't have any routes yet, right? And we don't have that authorization that I promised. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and add our authorization. Now here's the fun part of nested stacks. Okay, this is what makes life easy here. Okay, so in this authorization, I'm going to walk through this. Here's my name for it. I'm just calling it general auth because I'm going to use it everywhere. And then I need some scopes. I can use email. I can use any authorization scopes if I want them. But the identity source is where HTTP API will look for a token in the header, request.header.authorization. I can put this to other things, but this is industry standard for OAuth. So I'm going to say, look in the string request.header, and that's actually a path mapping that says, look on the request, go to the header section, and grab the authorization token. And then for my JWT configuration, I'm going to pass an issuer. Now, the issuer is the address of the domain from Cognito. And it's going to have a string with my Cognito address and my specific application ID pool ID. But I don't want to put that in there. I'm already outputting that in my stack, my authorization stack, I actually build a string called the issuer. Okay, and it's my Cognito IDP plus the region plus my user pool ID. So in here, I can just refer to that as get at, so get attribute from the auth stack. That's the logical name of that nested stack. The output section, grab the issuer. And for the audience, this is going to be the user pool client ID. Okay, this is a standard setup for JWT. We won't spend too much time here, but I do have a session with Sam where I talk more about this, but that's important to know. Okay, so that sets up the authorization, and it uses that nested stack that I put in there, and we're all built out.
Eric, I've just got a question in from Dan_MBA saying,
yeah.
Do you need to allow options? That was talking about the calls.
So yeah. So you can. Well, in this testing, no, we're not going to need to because I'm just using Postman. When I'm using a website and I'm starting to get into puts and things like that, then I need options. You don't need options for simple get.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan, for your question.
Yeah, that was good. All righty. So the final thing we're going to do is we're going to build out our actual route configuration. And to do this, I'm going to use OpenAPI. Now, I could start grabbing standard CloudFormation configurations like the stage from I can do API Gateway v2 stage, API Gateway v2 route, and I can build all those out. However, industry standard for API Gateway, for API gateways as a generic statement, those are quotes, not apostrophes, I know that, and is OpenAPI, right? And we're at the 3.1 spec, and API Gateway does support that. So I'm going to use OpenAPI, and I'm going to do it in YAML because that's the only way you should do it. That's opinionated. I get it. All right, so let's grab this. Now, normally, I would do this as a separate file, much like I did the nested stack. But this isn't very big, and to keep it kind of simple, we'll go ahead and put it in the same file. But I can export this. I just pasted it right back over itself. I can export this and use an external file, and I have examples of that in quite a few places in sessions with Sam if you're interested on how to do that. All right, so that got kind of big, but it gives us an idea. So here's my definition body, and I want to make sure that's lined up in the right place. It is, because YAML spacing is key. So there's a couple things. These kind of things, these are just some of the metadata around it. What version am I using? What's the name of the API? But this is where we get good. This is where we get what we want. Hey, thanks for posting that. So what I'm able to do here is for the route, I'm using a path parameter token. All right, zip, curly bracket, zip. So that says that in the root, I'm expecting a zip. Okay, I'm expecting some type of string or number or text that is to be after the root. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm adding this is an X Amazon API Gateway any method that says anything that comes through, go ahead and pass to the proxy, right? And then I just the response is I'll get back from the weather for the zip code. For security, does that look familiar? General auth. That is the same authentication that I'm building up here, general auth. So that matches. So it's saying this route should be protected by the general authentication. I don't need to pass anything else. I'm not doing any other configuration to that at the moment. I'm good with the default. I could add some scopes or some other audiences here to make this a more granular protection, but I'm okay with my general authentication right now. All right, and so I'm going to do a couple of things, okay? I'm going to do, this is where we get into this. I'm going to rewrite some of these headers like I talked about, okay? So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to, hang on just a moment here. I feel like I'm missing something, which happens to me sometimes. Here it is. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's jump down to the request parameters first, okay? So what I'm doing is when that comes in, so let's go back to Postman and look at how that looks, okay? So this is what they're expecting. They're expecting a zip parameter, zip equals 80534, and they're expecting an app ID to include the key, right? Again, I just showed it to you. I'm going to have to change that now, okay? So stop hovering, Eric. All right. So it's expecting those. So what I'm going to do in my code is I'm going to say append to, and this is appending to our domain, right? Append a query string.zip. So it's appending that, and the value of that should be the request.path.zip. So it's grabbing from the path that we're sending in, append it to the query string that I send on to the proxy. So let's explain that again. It's going to take the request.path.zip from what's coming in, and it's going to convert that and add it to the query string as zip. So now it becomes zip equals the zip code, right? So it's a query string now. And I'm also going to append the query string.app ID. And you'll notice I have not hard coded that app ID in here. Now I've already showed it to you twice in public, so this may be a moot point. But if you're securing that, I'm storing it in a secrets manager, and I'm resolving that right from SAM and pulling that key in. So I'm able to say and append the .app ID and add it this value to it. Okay, so with these two, I can change the configuration of how that is. I can move from path parameters to query string parameters and put that exactly how my service behind my proxy is expecting. Now, a trick on this, you may think, Eric, I know you're thinking to yourself, Eric, you memorize OpenAPI? You're amazing. Man, I can't even spell OpenAPI. Let's be truthful. I understand the configuration and things like that, but here's the tip, and I've said this before. I built it in the console first. I went into the console. I built out how to use, I built out all the transformations, and then I exported the OpenAPI and then configured it for how I needed. And that's a great way for doing proof of concepts and scoping out what you want. Let Amazon do the work for you. Let AWS API or Amazon API Gateway do that work for you and build those YAML templates for you.
Eric, so just that Secrets Manager integration, you're not setting up anything else other than the stuff in Secrets Manager. API Gateway just handles the connectivity to Secrets Manager and just pulls that data from you. Job done. You're not having to use a Lambda function to grab that from Secrets Manager,
right?
Or cache it anywhere or whatever.
Right, but let's clarify. This actually has nothing to do with the API Gateway. By doing this resolve here, so I'm doing resolve secret manager and then the name of my key, and then I'm telling it it's going to be a secret string and then the name of the actual key for the value. So you have the name of the secret and then the name, because you can have multiple secrets in there. And SAM on deployment resolves that value and inserts it here so that it's not something you have to pass in as a parameter or anything like that. So it's actually, it'll be a SAM that resolved that, or CloudFormation itself.
So this is going to be something that's actually generated at build time. It's not actually something you need to manage at runtime, which is
right. Good. You will not call the API for secrets manager over and over and over and over. And this is my default way of doing it, unless I need a value that's going to change more than I want to redeploy my Lambda functions. So, and then for that, you want to use the app config in an extension, which Mr. Julian Wood has written a wonderful blog on, which can allow you to update Lambda data or Lambda parameters on the fly without having to redeploy. Yep. And also saves you from having to call that. Okay, so that's explained. So now we've modified that incoming path to become query strings to talk to our client on the back end. Okay. So the next thing I did is I said, let's change the response as well. If the response is a 200, pipe it right through. It's a proxy. We're not doing anything. Just put it right through. But if I get a 400, I want to change that up a little bit. Okay. If I get a 400, then what I want to do is I want to redirect this user to my client website to a page I have called instructions. Now, it's probably a little overkill, right? But I wanted to show how to do this. So what happens in the response parameters, if I get a 400 right here, then I'm going to append a header called location, which tells a browser to redirect and tell it that the status code is no longer a 400, but instead it is a 302. And I can check my logs that I've output, all these, to see why that was a 400. Most likely it was missing a zip or something like that, because my code's perfect and rarely fails. So it has to be the user. Right, Julian? Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. Now, the final part of this is, this is some information specific to HTTP API gateway integrations, but the one you care about, we pass anything that comes in. Now, you may be saying, hey, wait a minute, Eric, you said only do gets. Let's be secure. You're right. The front door of HTTP API gateway is saying, hey, I'll only take gets. Okay. But past that, it's saying I'll pass whatever I get to the proxy, even though I'm only allowing gets, whatever comes in. Now, I could break that down and say, hey, just pass a get as well. But I'm trusting HTTP API for my security and not the proxy, the proxied service. That's one of the whole reasons I'm doing this. Okay, and the final thing is the URI that I want to pass it to. And notice it's not just the domain; it's the path all the way to that service. Right? I've left off any query string or information, but here's the path that it pushes through. And then, of course, the connection type is via the internet. All right. So to deploy this, I've built this. We're done. Okay. Well, actually, there's a couple more things I want to add. Okay. So I like to do outputs to help me with information, especially if I'm setting this up. So, hey, I almost put those outputs right in the terminal. That would have been bad. Okay, outputs are data that you can collect, or you can output. I don't know another way to say that. I was trying not to use the word on the definition, but sometimes you can't get around it. Output. There it is. All right. And so what this does is it takes that information, and so I'm going to put out the API extension that I'm using. Okay, or the API endpoint. I'm also going to put out the auth URL, because when I set up Postman to authenticate, I need that URL. And I need the client ID. So rather than me having to dig to the CloudFormation stuff, I go ahead and output it. So once SAM is through deploying, it's done. So I'm going to deploy this, but I have a working copy we'll look at over in just a minute here. So real quick, I'm going to do a little test here. I'm going to validate first. Actually, I'm going to make sure I'm in the right folder. Let's see. Weather. There we go. So I like to validate just to make sure, hey, is my template even, does a test transform work? So yeah, it did. Oh, look, there's an update. So all this does is it says, hey, I'm going to try that transform just to make sure it works. This saves me from some headaches for later. I can even do a SAM validate debug like this, and that'll actually kick out the transform version of it if you want to see what that looks like. And there you go. So it's above here, and that's an actual CloudFormation template that you can use. So let's go ahead.
This is just validating the transform that Sam, because Sam is building CloudFormation, raw CloudFormation as it goes through. This is going to validate the transform. It's not necessarily going to validate that that's a valid deployment.
That's right.
But
That's right.
this is at least one step. And the cool thing is you can also run this in a CI/CD pipeline or something like that. This is just another quick test you can do. Is at least my basic template going to land up in CloudFormation?
That's right. That's right. It does not validate syntax. It does not it's not a linter for YAML. Now, granted, if your YAML's bad, most likely it's not going to build. But sometimes if you got it bad just the right way, it will still validate. So you're right. It's not a linting tool. So, all right. So let's go ahead and deploy this. I'm going to do SAM deploy -G. No. And on our Rob, I'm going to do guided because I'll hear from him. So when I do that, it's going to ask me what I want to name this. So I'm going to call it weather demo. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and go to US West 1, which is my default. Yes, I'm good to keep that domain. Okay, so confirm changes. No, I don't need to confirm changes. Allow SAM to create the roles, and we'll save all the information, and off we go. Now, while that's deploying, we're not going to sit here and watch it because I know it'll deploy.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
We're going to go over, and this, I have a working version of this here. Now, if I hit send right now, you'll notice I get unauthorized, okay? Because I've wrapped some security around this. So we're going to go ahead and go over. I have this in a group, so I'm going to use the authorization. So I'm able to actually, I have it all configured. You'll notice I've got here's my auth URL. That's where I need to go to log in. Here's my client ID, which I've kept secret through parameters. I'm not going to hover, so you can't see it. My scope, email, so on and so forth. So I can go ahead
and auth URL and the Cognito ID. That's what you're getting from the outputs from.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. So now I'm going to do get new access token. You can't see it, so I'll pull it over to here. This is the login domain. Now it's not very pretty. You can make it look a lot better. I'm not a designer. I'm a developer advocate. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to sign in, and then it's going to kick me back to Postman. And it says, hey, your authentication is complete. Let's go ahead and proceed with this. Let's use that token. And then I need to save that so it's shared with the things. So let's go.
So that's a standard JWT token. You could view that anywhere, and that's going to tell you the information.
That's right. And looky there, we have data coming in. Okay, so I'm now authorized, and I'm passing. Like I said, it's mapping all that data. It's inserting the API ID. It's mapping the zip code to a query string parameter. Now, what happens if I don't include a zip? What happens? Well, look at there. I get a 302. Okay, it says nothing to geocode. I like the error. It's a COD. It's COD 400. Okay, and the message is nothing to code. But if I look at my headers. In my headers, not there, the header's down here, I'm sorry. Body, my screen's too small. So in the headers, you'll see I have a location that would, if I were using an actual browser, would redirect me to the serverlessweather.com instructions website. So there you go. We have modified the request, changed it so it matches my service, my backend service, and we have modified the response based upon the status code. There you go. So, all right. So now let's take a risk and see if I actually deployed. Oh, I did not. Okay. Oh, yep. There it is. Okay. So this is interesting. When you use a nested stack, you have to add the normal capabilities are capability IAM named IAM, but you have to add capability auto expand. Right. So I could actually, here's a fun little thing. If I went in here to my samconfig toml file that was created, okay, I can change the capabilities to actually be, let's grab that. Let's copy that because nobody trusts my typing. Okay, capability, auto expand. Oh, come on. Well, that's fun. All right, so we'll do this. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to go into my samconfig toml file. Pull it up here. Let's get this out of the way. When you're presenting and you use these massively large fonts, it makes it lots of fun. Okay. So now that says capability auto expand. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, so right now my stack is in rollback, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I have this little RM stack, little alias that I use. So we're going to kill the weather demo. And then let's redeploy this. And then you and I can answer questions, and then we'll come back and see if it worked. So I've already tried the deploy. The only thing I needed to change was my capabilities. So let's go ahead. Instead of just walking through that wizard again, I'm just going to do SAM deploy. And let's see what happens.
So just to jump in there while we are waiting, that SAM deploy -G or -- guided, when you went there and said, please, dear Sam, can you go and save that configuration to a TOML file? That's what it's saving to the SAM config.
That's right.
TOML. And you can stick loads in there. You can see it's got the stack name. It's got the S3 bucket. Eric's done loads of stuff on this, and it's super useful, even for different environments. So you could have a prod environment, a dev environment, all that kind of stuff in there.
Still blew up.
I see red.
Oh my goodness, embedded. Okay, so you know what? I'll have to check that out and figure out why. Generally, so now here's the one fun part of doing stacks, and while we answer questions, I'm going to figure this out. The one fun thing when doing stacks is I don't get the feedback from a stack in SAM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to, and I might do it off screen. And this is part of development, right? Sometimes you just got to figure this out. I'm going to look at this. And Julian, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, certainly. We have got one that's come in from GSK 308. It's a DNS one. When using a DNS record for the API gateway endpoints in Route 53, why is it required to create custom domains and then add them to the record instead of the direct endpoint of the API gateway?
Okay, so make sure I understand this. Instead of adding, so basically what I'm hearing. Okay, oh, there it is. Okay, record instead of the direct endpoint. Okay, so I'm going to be real clear. I'm not a DNS expert, but a lot of when we're pointing to records, when an API gateway is first created, it has this an automatically applied domain name that's built with the ID of the API itself, and then Amazon. I don't remember the exact. I've got one here. It's like we build it out based on some different values. So execute -API, so on. That's automatically kind of hidden, added to a record, and pointed as well. When you create your own, then that record is an alias to this, and so you're telling Route 53, hey, this is my custom domain, but an alias is over to this domain. So it is a record. Hopefully that helps. Glad to take that offline, get one of our DNS experts on that as well. But good question.
Yeah, that my answer to that would be similar as well. I think with the whole point of DNS is it's a hierarchical system, and so having some of those extra layers in the DNS does make it just a bit more flexible. Because remember, DNS queries are also cached all over the world. So if you do have you could just use some of that custom domain names and the caching. So basically your end clients have a far quicker failover if you did have to redeploy the stack maybe in another region or maybe to another account, and that whatever .execute -API had to change. That's just going to happen behind the scenes and you're not going to see. But yeah, GSK 308, thank you very much for the question. Any others, send them on. We're available for your questions. If we don't know, we'll say so, and we'll ask internally, or we'll do some quick Googling. That's
absolutely. And while we're doing that, I found the issue with ours. I already have a user pool name called Weather2 user pool, and so and I can actually now my general rule is to let CloudFormation name things. Okay, I rarely hard code. I did this particular hard code for very good reason that I cannot tell you. All right. I looked at this and go, that breaks my rules. So rule is generally don't name, if you don't have to name something, don't name CloudFormation resources, because what'll happen is exactly what just happened here. You'll be live streaming on a Twitch in front of billions of people and you'll have name collisions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and see if we can't make this deploy again while we're talking. And we can go back and look at other questions as we need. All right. Anything else coming in?
I'm just checking the questions from the billions of viewers, and at this stage, I think you're doing such an excellent job that there don't seem to be questions from the billions of viewers. I thought one had come in. No, it hasn't.
All
So
right.
yes, something I'm just going to add in is, often sometimes people are wondering and thinking about, well, how do I choose between HTTP APIs and REST APIs? And that's obviously a valid question. And there is this handy website which does go through some of the differences. And of course, that's being updated as soon as any new features for HTTP APIs do come out, and does talk about some of the differences. Obviously, the big things that come out, Eric and my team as well, we blog about them regularly, and hell, we do Twitch series and things about this as well to try and get the information out. But that link I posted there is the sort of one-stop shop talking about all the differences between them, and you will slowly see some of those capabilities be reduced, and there won't be one and in the other, or there are some marked differences. And some of those differences do make things easier while Eric is carrying on. For example, something we did recently talking about the authorization is we do have a simpler authorization model with HTTP APIs, which just does have a binary yes or no, are you authorized? So previously with REST APIs, you had to generate a whole IAM policy document, which you had to send then to the front end or to whatever service was calling it. And yeah, that's fine. That's cool. But obviously this needs to be, this can be much simpler. So you can actually now use a Boolean authorizer. And so you can just say, am I authorized or am I not? And you don't actually have to create that whole IAM policy, which was just a bunch of extra code in your Lambda authorizer that you maybe didn't have to use. Only thing you need to think about with that is to do with caching, because if you're using that Lambda authorizer along with the different views, a Boolean value is just yes or no. And so when Eric showed the header authorization, you want to add something else, maybe the base path mapping in it to construct the cache uniqueness, so you're not sharing too much of that cache particularly for your authorization.
Yep. So here's the deal, and I tried to show it while you were talking. If you saw, I showed it and I highlighted it. It was in the outputs as well. So it's still a naming collision, and I actually removed it. Now, when you do an output in CloudFormation, you have to name it, because that's actually an export. So it's an output, and then you can actually export it as a stack export that another stack can grab and pull in. So it needs a name, right? And dynamic names are kind of rough because you might be grabbing it from somewhere else. So, all righty. I saw something come in from Mr. John Walsh.
Yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, Eric.
No, you're all right. It's still crashing on me.
John Walsh is just talking, can HTTP, I presume APIs, run inside a VPC?
Can they run inside a VPC? So there's a couple. So HTTP can do private integrations, meaning that it can point to stuff inside of VPC. It does not provide private endpoints, meaning it sits in a VPC or is in front of a VPC. So there's a difference there. So yes, you can use HTTP in combination with either ALB, NLB, or Cloud Map to actually post that, or to put it, to do private integrations, but you can't. It won't sit in a VPC. REST APIs you still can do that with.
Yes.
So we're gonna figure this out.
Yeah. Can you just highlight what do you think of the differences from the sort of private API endpoint as well from the different APIs? Because obviously we're talking about a lot of different things here. We're talking about going into API gateway and then into a VPC. We're talking about hosting private APIs within a VPC and the VPC endpoints, because there are some differences between the.
There are, and you pretty much said it. Private APIs are only available inside the VPC, right? So it's for other resources to call. They're not publicly available. They're not going to, they're locked down to just access from maybe a direct connect or other resources in the VPC. Private integrations make VPC housed resources, and really where this comes in is like EC2 instances. Or obviously ECS or EKS, when those clusters are managed or inside of VPCs, but you want to make them publicly available. And you could use ALB, of course, you could use NLB, of course, but if you want to take advantage of the API gateway features, throttling, caching, authentication, and so, like I could name a bunch. Then you want to use API gateway in front of that. So does that help delineate between those?
Does for me, John. Yeah, let us know if we can provide any more information. So yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing. There are a whole bunch of ways to choose the front door to your application, and of course, ALBs, NLBs are all different levels of the stack to do it. But API Gateway specifically has got all these kind of capabilities Eric was talking about, and specifically now with HTTP APIs, maybe API Gateway REST APIs just has too much stuff that you don't really need. And you know what, if you've got a busy API, well, costs can add up, and if you're not going to use all the kind of features and maybe you're just wanting authentication, well, HTTP APIs is a super way to go. And the last thing I just want to mention about that is you can also mix and match, not obviously with the same API endpoint, but there may be situations where you're looking at your API Gateway REST APIs, and if they're just doing some basic authentication or just doing some path mapping or something, those are perfect to just carve out to HTTP APIs. It's going to be simpler, it's going to be faster, it's going to be cheaper. And then some of those more advanced APIs that you do have that doesn't have the feature parity with HTTP APIs, and maybe you are doing throttling or caching, or you are doing something that's, like Eric was mentioning about a private API, those you could keep on your Amazon API Gateway REST APIs. So it's definitely worth just taking a step back and looking at what your APIs are all being used. It doesn't cost you much other than administrative time to add more APIs. So it may be a good opportunity to look at your API landscape, see what you've got, and see what you could carve out from your existing REST APIs into HTTP APIs. It's going to be faster, going to save you money. You know what? Not always a bad thing to look at that.
All right. We're going to go again here. So a couple things here, and things you do right in public. One, the naming, like I talked about, and two, I was going too fast. The stack wasn't deleted before I tried to deploy the next one. So let's see if this goes, and if it doesn't, gives me a little bit better explanation of why it didn't. But this is troubleshooting tips, folks, especially with the nested stacks. Sometimes I pop right into the CloudFormation console, and I'll look at the nested stacks and see what are the reasons that isn't deploying. So so now, all right, now I have the information coming in. Okay, yeah. I'm killing myself. This is
down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Well, everything. So what's the problem is I haven't isolated all the domains. So this last one is it wants to know it's the domain itself that I'm creating. And so again, that's the last one I missed. I changed everything to weather. A better way to do this would have been to do a search and replace on the sub weather and change it to sub weather too. In fact, let's see if we can.
Yeah. Or you could have deployed this. Could you have deployed this to another region? Obviously, another.
I could have. Yes. That's another way of doing it. And I may do that. I'm using Cloud9, so I would have changed my credentials to do that. But that's okay. Yeah, so look, we're just going to look here real quick here. Sub weather, and then dash. So there's no more occurrences. We've got the 2 now. So we'll try, and I also want to do ref weather. Okay. Oops, no cap. So we'll give it a shot here and see what happens. And I'm going to delete the stack real quick. And do we have any other questions coming in while we're talking?
We do. Yeah. Well, seeing this is right in your wheelhouse as well, and we're talking about SAM. Thank you, Bhavish, for the question. What is the recommended CI/CD process for SAM? And I'm going to say that sort of depends. But I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is the fact that you even thinking or using a framework. Good job for you. That's literally the right starts where. Of course, Eric is doing SAM over here. SAM is great. But, if you're more comfortable using something like the serverless framework or even Terraform or anything like that. If you're using pure CloudFormation, the kind of little challenges that Eric's going through in here, you're going to get that same kind of thing. Using SAM or serverless framework, Terraform, we're not super opinionated all about the other kind of things. That doesn't matter. So use the framework and SAM is going to be great. As for recommended CI/CD processes for SAM, I don't know what would you say. I mean, some things I would say for Sam is, first of all, you've got your stuff in infrastructure as code as well. That's going to be super useful. You can connect Sam up to. You're done, Eric.
We're deployed. It was
Good
naming
job.
collisions all the way. So, and there's the information. Sorry to interrupt you, but a little bit
Not
of
at all.
celebration.
Not at
Here's
all.
the auth URL that I talked about. There's the key. This one will go away shortly. And then here is the API that we would hit to use it. So it does work. Just don't name your resources. So I apologize for, teaching you through hard knocks, but there it is.
Not at all.
So,
That's the kind of thing we'll do all the time. And you keep going over and then trying to work out what the error messages are and move forward with grace. So yeah, just about the CI/CD process for Sam. I think you were going to say something, or weren't you?
So there's a couple of things I would look at, and these are more in the actual configuration. Like Julian said, man, use a framework, and he listed some great ones. Use I tend to use the code suite, which is code pipeline, code build. It's what I've used forever. If you like Jenkins, it's all right. We just put out a great blog. I don't know if Julian, if you can find it. There's a blog on building a CI/CD with Sam and Jenkins. Excuse me. That you can use, but obviously use the CI/CD, and that's a great thing. As far as within this, and I'm going to post a link here real quick. I have a series of videos that I and Marcia did. I can't speak and type probably. All right, so I just posted a link, s12d.com/CICD, that there's a bunch of stuff on CICD with serverless. Built into serverless are some, are some what we call safe deploys, right? And so for Lambda functions, there's two places that you kind of test. Is it, usually it's your code. That's going to be the most normal, right?
Well,
so code in a serverless application is in a Lambda function, right? And so Lambda function has a safe deploy option or a deployment configuration where you can say, deploy this Lambda function, but before you go live, test it with this other Lambda function. Hit it, try it, make sure everything's working. And after you go live, you could test it, hit it, test all these. It's a pre and post hook, right? So you can test it. Hey, does the code work? And afterwards, you can test it. Hey, does the code work under this kind of load? And you can do that per Lambda in an application, right? So you can say, for these 6 Lambda functions, each one has a test Lambda function, or one, you can do whatever you want, but they're tested. If one of them fails, the whole stack rolls back. So you write that into your CI/CD process for always, look for what happens if you fail. In the sessions with Sam, and I'll just post this as 12d.com/sessions with Sam. I think he posted earlier. I do a whole episode on safe deploys and talks about linear, canary, and then all at once deploys and how to apply that. The second thing is if you're getting crazy on something like this, you can do canary deploys at the HTTP, at the API level. Now, right now, it's only in REST APIs. And we have a blog on that just released in the last month or so on canary releases through API gateway using REST API. So again, like Julian said, use the framework, use the service that you like, but build in this test and rollback procedure. Take the time to build it out so that you don't have to get up at 2 a.m. and fix things. Yeah,
and exactly. The testing is not just the sort of unit tests on your code, but this does become a bit more of an integration test. And the cool thing is with the safe deploys is you can check that the Lambda functions aren't erroring out when they get to above 1,000. Something like that. Maybe you've got an external database which is going to start throttling connections. That's a kind of bigger testing than you can do rather than just a unit test within your application.
I want to go back.
Yeah,
if it's okay. First of all, no, we're not in the same room. We just have the same background. I wish we were in the same room. We're not even in the same country. So
continent,
that's right. Or continent. That's true. So Julian's coming from London, and I am out of northern Colorado. So I wanted to grab this question real quick. Guys? Any benefits to using Cloud9 over your regular CLI? So Cloud9 is not a CLI, but it has Cloud9 is an IDE, and that may have been what you meant. Cloud9, I use Cloud9. One, because I like it. Two, because it's not local. I'm hitting it through a browser, and I have, like I said, a big honking machine that I use because when I do custom builds, things like that, I don't want my local machine to have to stream and build and compile and do all those things. I like Cloud9 quite a bit, and it's a great tool. It also has some great tools for peer programming. So Julian could log into the same one, and we could both be coding in the same template, and we could see where each other is and teach that way. So, yeah, the benefits are you can put it like I have this on a machine. It's 32 vCPUs and 128 gig of RAM. So maybe that's a little excessive, but I never have problems compiling. I did a demo on building Swift Lambda functions, and it worked fine. All right.
That's right, because you can obviously have multiple Cloud9 instances. So if you do need some sort of segregation, rather than bogging up all your laptop or your workstation, that's a good way to do it as well. And also the cool thing is you can get them to shut down if they're not in use after half an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, or some kind of thing. So I actually have quite a few different Cloud9 instances, and when I'm not using them, they just shut down. I hardly pay anything. And then if I'm working back on something I was working on a month ago or 2 weeks ago, I can just spin that up and I'm back to where it was.
That's right. I'm going to jump to this one if that's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, nope, you got one. Go ahead. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. There it is. All right. How easy does it have multi-environments? Dev, E2E, pipeline, manual. Okay. So really, it's pretty easy. If I'm deploying from SAM, which I want to do for my development environment, but not past that for staging, production, I want CI/CD pipelines, right? And we won't get into all the philosophies of should you use stages or branches or all that kind of stuff. But basically, the idea is the best practice is to break your environments into their own account. So production should have its own account, staging should have its own account, beta should have gamma, however you want to do it, right? And then each one of those has the identical pipeline built right into that account, right? So and it could be depending on it. You can do it on a tag, you can do it on a branch. However you commit to the Git repo, then your CI/CD takes over and builds for that environment. So I may have a main environment for production, or we'll call it production. I may have a staging branch or tag or something like that. So with SAM, if you do need to deploy from SAM, and I have a video coming out pretty soon that talks all through this, and I'm working some more information, but that profile, you can set up different profiles in the SAM config file and literally just say, if I do SAM deploy -- config environment production, it'll use the right AWS CLI profile and credentials. It'll use the right parameters that are passed in that are all saved in there. If I use config environment staging, then it uses a different set of ones. So I can go on and on about multiple accounts. I know we're running out of time. I want to grab a couple other questions, but hopefully
can we just do that? I'm just going to grab this one quickly. Does the Cloud9 support local testing?
Absolutely.
Yes, but maybe not the way you think, because it is all in the cloud. The local testing is within the IDE. So think of Cloud9 as a laptop in AWS's data center, and you are running it there. So the local testing is within the instance, which is sitting in the cloud. So it doesn't connect to your local laptop. When you connect to Cloud9, you're basically connecting over the internet via a browser. And so, the local testing isn't where you are physically sitting. The local testing is on the instance behind the scenes, which Cloud9 is running. What else?
All right. Eric? Let me grab this one real quick. What's the recommended approach? I could spend hours on this. VTL is great. VTL is powerful. VTL is hard. There's no lying. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that we do not have full transformation out for HTTP API, because we're looking at doing it a way that's easier. So when you come into, I have a URL shortener. This S12D we've been using, that has no Lambda functions in it. It's all VTL. It's wicked fast. It's stable, but it was very complex to build. I have a link to the code I'm glad to share. And so you have to decide yourself, how much time am I spent managing and building? So we do encourage you not to use Lambda functions for transporting, but use them for transforming. But if the VTL is getting kind of complex, then we encourage, use a Lambda function, So you have to balance your time on yes, VTL is cool, that's neat. But if it's getting pretty complex, I would move to a Lambda function. So.
Yeah, there's a quick link over there. I didn't find the short one for it, but yeah, that goes into, you can screenshot that, and that goes into actually building that.
That's it. Yep. I'll grab this one real quick here. And I know we're running out of time. So Father Goblin, you asked if I have an application running on an EC2 instance and I want to write some data to DynamoDB, would you recommend SQS or API Gateway? That, that's the famous, it depends. It really depends on your data. If you're dumping a bunch of stuff out and you want to batch it, then write it to an SQS and have a Lambda function put it in. You can write directly to DynamoDB, of course. It doesn't make sense to push it to a Lambda function, then to have it do the same code to write to DynamoDB. So you can use the SDK to write to DynamoDB. If you need a contract there, if you have multiple services hitting this and you want a contract, then use an API gateway. Yeah, absolutely. Slap an API gateway in front of it and maintain that contract at the API gateway, and then you can talk to that. I don't know, Julian, if you would change that answer or not.
No, I think that's it. I mean, it is a generic answer. It sort of does depend. The fact that you're already running on an EC2 instance means you already do have that there. So don't go and reinvent the wheel. Don't go and add unnecessary complexity if you don't do. But of course, think of API Gateway and Lambda as a managed service. That could reduce a whole bunch of complexity. If it means you can, slim down that EC2 instance or take stuff out and move to an event-based model with API Gateway and Lambda, that's going to be the good winner. So
bottom line, get off the EC2.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to say this is our time is coming to an end. That flew by, Eric. Wonderful knowledge dropping as you're doing. Serverlessland.com. This is Eric and my team. We run this. We manage this. Serverlessland.com. Everything you need to know about serverless on AWS. It's got blogs. It's got video series. It's got links to workshops, learning paths, events. Some cool stuff that's going to be coming out soon. So excited, but I can't tell you.
Yeah. With that, we are at time, so we probably ought to hit it.
Thank you so much for spending time with us this week. Next week, we will be on yet again. And as a bad host, I didn't bring up what we were going to be talking about next week. But whoever whatever it is, it'll be great.
Yeah, we are talking about messaging and events. Yeah, with Mr. James Bezic.
Yeah.
Someone write down that I said his name right.
So busy. Yeah. Excellent. So same time, same place, wherever you've been watching today. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Think up your questions over the week or send them to us. We're more than happy to help for you to build serverless applications. It's going to make your life easier, going to make your life awesome and make you look good and going to be awesome. So thank you for spending your time with us today. Until next time. Bye-bye.
See you later.